Very well done, and a Merry Christmas to you too. Not to be worried about us. The crew and I are not really here this morning. We videotaped the show a couple of days ago so we'd have the morning off. In lieu of our actual presence here, we have settled on a different kind of present for ourselves. Today we will revisit some of the people and places that enriched our lives this year, including the work of a young versifier who has become our resident poet. A modest fellow, but always prepared to defend his art, as he did after the fishing season got underway last May. The fishing openers come and gone, and anglers, please take note. We poets scoff at those who spent last weekend on a boat. There's not a special art to catching walleye, trout, or herring, but poetry requires a ton of patience, skill, and daring. You have to rise at 3 a.m., a dark and quiet time, no noise or lights to scare away your fragile sense of rhyme. You need a special pen, of course. I like the 5-inch Parker. A Bic is fine for sonnets, but haikus need magic marker. You then go to your secret spot, your favorite writing hole, and hope those words you know are down there rise up from your soul. And then the real excitement hits. God knows there's nothing sweeter than reeling in big images that scan in perfect meter. And when you've rhymed your limit and your rhythm's finally done, you meet up with your poet friends for real iambic fun. You tell the same old stories, like the one about the day you thought you'd found a rhyme for orange, but then it got away. Or how you wrote your epic with a plain old ballpoint pen, then had it framed and mounted on the fireplace in your den. Yes, poetry's a glamorous thing that just can't be denied. Brings a spark of fun to life that fishing can't provide. So keep your boring rods and reels, your tales of crappies biting. I've closed up shop, and on my door I've hung a sign, gone writing. We failed to mention earlier that much of what you'll see this morning has been selected to please ourselves, presuming, of course, they're also pleasing to you. For instance, one of photographer Bob Hernandy's favorite story came from the ride he took with reporter Bill Hudson on a once-dead steam engine.
To the generations of Americans who never felt the tug of steel and steam, the hands of time are turning back. Back to the days when huge iron horses rode the rails, fueled by water and coal.
It's owned by the National Railroad Museum and leased to a group of individuals in Minneapolis, St. Paul, who renovated it for the express purpose of operating tourist excursions for people.
40 years after its retirement, Milwaukee Road Engine 261 is steaming back to life. Bathed in morning light, its glossy black skin is but the shroud on $1 million renovation. With a blast of its whistle and a belch of smoke, 261 is rolling again. Enough coal to make Chicago and the first passenger excursion run. Pulling only a tender and crew car, old 261 galloped east through White Bear Lake in Washington County, threading a trestle high above the St. Croix. Inside the engine's cab, with glistening brass valves and gauges, Tony Becker was at the controls.
This is the first time I ever run an engine with a gold throttle on it.
This was his job for 43 years on the Great Northern. He's among the vanishing breed of steam engineers.
There's very few of them left at my age because they're just aren't around anymore. They're underneath the sod.
It's fireman Mike Schaefer's job to feed the belly of the engine's boiler with coal and monitor its water and steam.
You're always matching what you're doing to what the engineer's doing. You feed his demand for the boiler, for the steam.
Rolling through scenic countryside, the haunting sound of the whistle calls out. Cows scatter. But curious folks along the way flood to the nearest station, hoping the train will stop.
It's quite apparent that while these old iron beasts have long been gone from the railroad scene, their attraction has only grown stronger. At nearly every siding they passed by, at every station they stopped at, People flock to the rails with kids and cameras in hand.
Fantastic. It's really something. I can't believe it.
For many of those who looked on with awe, this was the closest they'd ever come to an old steamer. Others recalled days from their past.
Oh, heck, I can remember I used to stand under the trestle and let the smoke come up underneath your pants legs. And then go home and smell like coal, and you'll let it chew you out.
When it made its way into Boyceville, Linda Swenson's 8th grade class heard the whistle and ran out to sea.
It's just really interesting to the kids, I think. You know, they like the older things and different things, I think.
The crew invited the kids to take a peek at the cab. Others marveled at a fuel they'd never seen before, grabbing a chunk as a souvenir.
Coal! Oh. Coal from this engine.
Like riding a horse fresh from the stable, the old engine rolled on, chugging down the tracks to its next destination, its plume of smoke sending out signals along the way.
Well, I heard it from my house when it came across the high bridge. And so I saw the smoke, and we turned up here and came to see it real quick.
Soon the locomotive will hook up to vintage coach, dining, and observation cars to give passengers a ride on the lost past. For there's something romantic about belching smoke and hissing steam, a soothing and restful sight in this age of overload. For more on Sunday, I'm Bill Hudson.
Together with food, friends, and family, the holidays are blessed with a pleasing flow of music and concerts. Throughout today's program, we'll offer a sampling of seasonal music, including this annual City Children's Nutcracker performance, featuring the traditional story, but complemented by some rollerblading mice. With each new effort, our resident poet continues to startle us with his remarkable facility to versify at the drop of a hat. No prevailing mood or issue of our daily lives escapes his sense of rhyme. But privately, he has admitted it doesn't always come easy. He says, I've learned a lot about myself through all these many years. I've had my share of laughter, and I've had my share of crying. And of the many things that bring me untold joy in life, like having friends I treasure and a warm and loving spouse, I find that writing poetry remains my heart's delight. Had I the time, I'd just write verses, morning, noon, and evening. So many things inspire me, like a lovely night in June, the soft, romantic midnight light that shines down from the sky. Or maybe it's the kitten I saw playing with a ball, or possibly the mighty oak, so towering and so huge. I only write for fun, of course. I'm hardly Keats or Shelley. My words don't dance across the page like Nureyev or Fred Astaire. And though I think my verbal skills are quite refined and good, I've always found it difficult to rhyme things like I ought to. But still, before my time is up, before my race is run, I hope to see my poems in print someday before I'm finished. Despite some flaws, I like to think I have a certain style, a warm and puckish sort of charm that makes the reader grin. And maybe some big publisher will find them deep and funny, and they'll sell 1 million copies, and they'll make me lots of friends. But till that day, I'll hone my skills and calmly sit and wait and read my work to friends who will say, "We think your poems are good." Although his soul is that of a poet, Jim Northrup prefers identification as storyteller. He is also a weaver and a writer, skills he uses to give us all a better understanding of the American Indian.
Question: why do Indian men make better lovers? Answer: a lot of them don't have to get up and go to work in the morning.
You had to put that one up.
Yeah. Or question: what's the difference between praying in a casino and praying in church? Answer: at the casino, you really mean it.
Jim Northrup calls himself a storyteller. Some of his stories are funny. Some of his stories are pointed, like this poem called Lifetime of Sad.
She's 50, alone, and drunk. She has pride in her language, but no one to talk to. Some don't understand, some can't, some won't. Alcohol failed her. She's too drunk to talk, but not drunk enough to pass out. Her eyes show a lifetime of sad. She cried out for beer, smokes, attention, or affection. She only got the attention when she was caught stealing food from the house she was visiting. She was asked to leave. She left, 50, alone, and drunk.
All of Jim's stories try to make connections between Indians and whites, between past and present.
It's got a lot of tensile strength, and it's what my grandpa used.
Past and present are intertwined in the ricing baskets Jim and his wife Pat make.
I realize that this is an old design. The Anishinaabe people use baskets like this for a long time. And I think it's important to be connected with something that worked so well in the past.
While Jim weaves, his kids practice at their baskets. Jim knows someday they'll learn these baskets. The baskets are made of willow, birch, and basswood.
I usually fold it right here. That gives you a nice rough handle to hold on to.
Jim wants his children to learn to skin the basswood's bark. To peel a birch.
A cut allows the bark to crack open. Hands slipped inside feel the smooth wet. The bark jumps from the tree, eager to help us make a basket or two.
The baskets and the woods they spring from are just part of Jim's life. He wants people, especially white people, to know more about all parts of Indian life, not just the pretty stereotypes.
I think if they know more about us, it'll make it a lot easier for my grandson.
To make it easier for grandson Aaron, Jim weaves his stories from the reservation.
I used to be a bullshitter, but it didn't pay, so I became a storyteller.
To the stage.
You know, I used to be known as a bullshitter. That didn't pay anything. So I decided to call myself a storyteller. That was a little better.
Jim jokes he's traveled from the Res Road to Broadway in Albert Lee, where he's performed a one-man show of his stories.
I'm not Indian. I'm Anishinaabe.
Jim's stories weave a thread from the stage lights back to the reservation to his Res Road.
It's the same thing. You're up here talking to a group of people, trying to connect with a group of people. And it's just another way to tell a story. Coming from the light, traveling through the dark, and then traveling to the light again.
Some of Jim's stories are set in Vietnam, where he served as a Marine and took hundreds of slides, now stored in this Tupperware box. Jim says writing his war stories loosened the bonds tying him to Vietnam. Now he spends more time on matters closer to home, Indian matters.
In the state of Minnesota, there's probably 50,000 Indians. And out of that 50,000, maybe 300 or 400 call themselves writers. And out of that 300 or 400, maybe 5 or 6 are getting published or making a living on their writing. And so I'm one of those 5 or 6.
Jim says he'll keep on writing, keep on weaving connections between Indians and whites, past and future. He'll keep on walking the res road, living on a reservation surrounded by family.
I don't have a fine car, but I do have something that somebody's looking for, which is a sense of being connected to a place or to a group of people.
Surrounded by that family, the storyteller weaves baskets and connections between past, present, and future.
I'll still be doing what I'm doing. You know, the fame or even the fortune, whatever happens, I'll still be making baskets in June, going ricing in August, September, until I'm dead.
We'll be back in a moment, but first we'll sample a bit of a recent Minnesota Sinfonia concert. This one at the Lindale Elementary School in South Minneapolis. For one Sunday this year, we went looking for an attraction, say, that would require us to stop, at least for a moment, the frenetic pace of our helter-skelter lives. Well, we found it in a bowl of tea at the Como Conservatory's Japanese tea house. In one respect, you do have to be quick, because the tea house is open only from Mother's Day to Labor Day.
Is everybody here? Please come in.
Jim Herman, a Catholic priest from Anoka, is the honto, the assistant host for our tea ceremony today. He'll guide us and the other guests through the intricacies of taking
We'll
tea.
do that now. And the first thing that you do when you go out into the garden is, when we open the shoji here, is we place our slippers on the rock here in front. I have placed mine there to show you, and then we sit down, and then we put our slippers on our feet.
Then step carefully through the inner garden, designed without showy flowers, nothing to distract from our focus, an afternoon tea. Before tea, we wash.
And then we, with the ladle, we put water in the ladle, and then we pour some on our left hand, and then we pour some on our right hand, pour a little bit more in our left hand, and touch it to our lips. Not to drink it, but just to really purify wash our mouth a little bit. And then we pour the water down the stem so that the handle is clean for the next person.
The slippers, the ritual cleaning, may seem unconnected to a simple bowl of tea, but those who study Japanese tea ceremony, like Judith Fleming, believe each action serves a purpose and leads to the next.
It is very much like studying ballet. There are different movements, and those movements together present the most beautiful thing that you could ever see.
The next movement is designed to humble, bending down to enter the tea house.
So in the beginning, we usually sit quietly. The tea room is a world kind of all unto itself.
In this world, it is quiet, a stillness seldom heard in everyday life, and more rarely on TV. The quietness is startling, then restful. We observe our host, Richard Fouché, carrying in sweets and the makings for tea.
The host will come in now with the water jar, and he will bow before he comes in, and we all bow with him.
In the silence, each movement stands out. The ritual cleaning of the utensils, the scooping of green tea from a mountain-shaped hill, the whisking of tea in water, the clink of china, and then the smell, the warmth, the taste of tea. While our host prepares tea for the first two guests, his tea teacher, Patricia Katagiri, stays in the kitchen, preparing tea for the rest of the guests.
It really takes a lot of care and effort, and I think people appreciate that. because sometimes we don't find it in our everyday life.
Everyday life seems far from this tea room, far from the quiet, from the careful movements which Richard and Jim, Patricia and Judith have studied for so long.
There is a form that we have to be very aware of. And as you practice tea and you're going through tea, you learn that form. But eventually, you get beyond the form. And then you can make a good bowl of tea.
With that good bowl of tea comes a calmness as foreign as the bitter tea.
I think there's a real value to just kind of sitting quietly and just paying attention and listening to all the things.
And as we guests leave, we carry with us the taste of bitter green tea and the sense of having been served well.
And we will try with all of our hearts to make you a very delicious bowl of tea, and we will serve it to you with all of our beings. And all we ask of you is to enjoy it with your heart.
Not all of the traditional music of the season is performed traditionally. Alan Cox reported recently the story of computer Christmas cards. Here, a sampling, and we'll be back in a moment. Do you have room on your mantle for one more Christmas card? We here at More on Sunday, Morons as we are sometimes called, affectionately we hope, wish to offer our season's greetings to you.
Happy Holidays!
These are most of the people responsible for getting this program on the air each week. Who are they? What do they do? I don't know who they all are, but most of the time they just stand around like this. But there's producer Kate Havlin surveying the Edina Yacht Club's model boats. Kate helps coordinate the show and files the feature story each week with principal photojournalist Bob Hernandez, who set his camera down momentarily at the Walker's Fluxus exhibit, where executive producer Beth Perlman, who launched More on Sunday way back in January of '92, put together an amazing story. Our video coordinator Marla Einerson deserves particular credit. She puts her heart and immense skills into editing our video stories. Victor Raines deserves thanks for our elegant graphics. Scott McLean creates enticing promotional pieces. Director of local programming Lori Fink-Gerlich oversees the show, and we do have oversight. In the tape room, Ted Falcon keeps a sharp eye out for weird video items. And come showtime, the crew and news control takes over. Director Roger Nelson. Production assistant Shannon Keenan. Technical director Deborah Nafziger. Chiron operator Amy Sloan. And prompter operator Ed Kunkel. All smoothing over the rough parts to make this program clean and sometimes accurate. Can't forget Jim Rama on audio, who keeps his ears and eyes open for offbeat tidbits. In the studio, these fellows shout good morning each Sunday. Among the regulars are floor director Mike Maroney. Camera operators Bob DeWild, George Peak, and Lee Erickson. Makeup artist Liz Zilka makes me look spiffy, as much as she can. And I think that covers everybody, except for the writer. The writer? This show is written? Ah, that's a good one.